Hi everybody. This is the Aries video, the transits and aspects in Aries for the remainder, as I look ahead the next 12 months video that I had mentioned that I would do. And it is an important, and none of these, I would not be doing these videos if I thought that it was just fluff and if I thought that they weren't relevant. So just as a very quick reminder, we came out of the eclipses in Mercury retrograde by April 25th. Technically, by the 28th, I like to say, as Mercury direct started to gather just a little bit of speed. And we are now at a point where we have about 6 months of pure forward movement, with August being the next time when we're going to have a pause, when Mercury is going to go retrograde again. But for all of May and June and July, it is forward movement. All the personal planets are moving forward. Wow, the birds are active. Let me just close this window. They're very sweet. There's, Los Angeles in some ways is a bit of a garden. It's really nice to wake up to a lot of birdsong and to kind of have birdsong at dusk. But it's when you're doing a video, as I've mentioned to you before, when I do a video, I can hear everything really loudly for whatever reason. Everything becomes really amplified. And so those birds felt like they were sitting on my shoulder and tweeting at me. Out of the Mercury retrograde and the eclipses, 3 months now of forward movement after whatever doors have been opened and closed for us during the eclipses and whatever downloads we received during Mercury retrograde. There's a video I did a few videos ago, 2 or 3 videos ago, that looked at the week ahead, the week that is ending today and tomorrow. But it also talked about where we were at the end of this process and cycle. And after that, I did videos on the sign of Capricorn, the sign of Aquarius, the sign of Pisces. And that's not about whether you have the sun in Capricorn or Aries or Aquarius or Pisces, or the moon or your rising. We all have these signs in some house in our chart. And it is looking at what we have come through since the beginning of this year and what is still left. And these are relevant topics to discuss for the simple reason that slower moving but powerful planets continue to remain and exercise influence in these parts of the chart. In the Capricorn part of the chart, we have 2 full moons coming up and Pluto going into end a transformational cycle. It began in 2008. In the Aquarius part of the chart, we had Pluto spending most of 2024 and then after November, really up for about 19 years, transforming the Aquarius part of the chart. And as the planets, personal planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars move into Taurus and Gemini, they're going to aspect Pluto. In the sign of Pisces, which was the video I did yesterday, I talked about Saturn and Neptune, and also, extremely importantly, the fact that the North Node eclipses are going to move into the Pisces-Virgo axis, start that process in the second half of this year. Next year, 3 of the 4 eclipses will be on the Pisces-Virgo axis. The eclipses continue into 2026. And I also talked about the fact that around this time next year, we're going to have both Venus and Mercury retrograde for part of the time in Pisces. So it gives us a sense of, and as the planets, personal planets, Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars move into Gemini, they're going to square and be in conversation with Saturn and Neptune. Now, today, we talk about the sign of Aries. When we were talking about the eclipses and the Aries part of the chart, the house occupied by the sign of Aries in your birth chart. If you know what your rising sign is, I use whole signs, WHOLE. So if you have Cancer rising, you would place Cancer in your first house, the next sign Leo in the second, the next sign Virgo in the third, the next sign Libra in the fourth, the next sign Scorpio in the fifth, and so on. So whatever your rising sign is, put that in your first house, and from there, just put the next sign in the next house, and you'll know when I say the sign of Aries, which house it falls in. If you are, for example, a Cancer rising, Aries will fall in your 10th house. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Aries will fall in your 10th house. So you just kind of put all the successive signs in the next houses, and it'll give you that sense. If you are a Leo rising, Aries will be in your 9th house. If you are a Virgo rising, Aries will be in your 8th house, so on and so forth. I'll let you figure it out. When we talk about the signs of Aries and Taurus, and as a reminder, the Taurus new moon is on Tuesday evening for me, Pacific time. It's going to be Wednesday for some folks. So tomorrow's video is going to talk about the new moon in Taurus and the Taurus transits. In some ways, I'm a little miffed that I'm doing these videos before a new moon. Whenever I do videos before, I always like to do my new moon videos after a new moon, or at least maybe about 4 or 5 days or a week in advance, because I find that the videos that I put out in the dark of the moon, as we currently are moving towards, they don't get as much activity often than the videos that I put out when the moon is bigger. It's just one of these kinds of interesting things. As I've mentioned to you, we are heading into the dark of the moon, and we are, the new moon is on Tuesday, really, for all intents and purposes. We're in the dark of the moon. So there's going to be, and the moon is currently in Aries, which is what this video is about. So there's a sense of wrapping up the Aries month. The last new moon was also solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th, conjuncting Chiron. And on Tuesday, the new month of Taurus, with the new moon in Taurus, begins for 28 days. With the Aries solar eclipse, we are also going to look towards things related to that solar eclipse escalating towards the Gemini new moon 2 months after a solar eclipse, the week before, after June the 8th. I find really like it has a resonance to that solar eclipse. And because Mercury was retrograde at the time of the solar eclipse, a lot of us are going to find that not only with this new moon in Taurus, but not just the new moon in Taurus, even for the past few days, as we've gotten back onto the horse after Mercury has gone direct and the eclipses are behind us, not only the new moon in Taurus, but even the past few days, we have started to, with Mercury now direct, get a sense of, started to see developments related to that new moon solar eclipse in Aries. As I had mentioned to you, even though the solar eclipse occurred on April the 8th, expect that developments related to that would really become more present and manifest, especially for those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth charts, after April the 28th or thereabouts, and things really get going after the Taurus new moon. And both the signs of Aries and Taurus hold the houses occupied by Aries and Taurus in a house, hold the forward momentum in our charts. The North Node is transiting Aries, and the eclipses in Aries, 3 of the 4 eclipses in 2024 have been on the Aries-Libra axis. So we had the March 24th lunar eclipse in Libra, we had the April 8th solar eclipse in Aries, and later in the year, on October the 2nd, we're going to have a solar eclipse in Libra. The Libra eclipses are South Node eclipses. We need to release something in the Libra house in our chart, the house occupied by Libra in our chart, and the Aries eclipses are North Node eclipses, and they are solar eclipses. So there's this sense of starting something, heading towards something, moving towards something that holds promise and growth and adventure and excitement and a sense of calling and a sense of rightness in the Aries part of our chart. The first of the Aries eclipses was last year in 2023. We had 2 new moons in Aries last year, in March and in April. The new moon on April the 19th of 2023 was a solar eclipse. As I've been saying to you, by the time we got to June, July, August, we had a sense of where it is that we wanted to go, what direction we wanted to move towards, probably growing since April the 19th, even since March of last year. But as we headed into the Mercury retrograde in Virgo and the solar eclipse in Libra on October the 14th last year, we were thwarted from moving forward because the focus was more by March 25th of this year to release what we needed to release in the Libra part of the chart. The Aries new moon solar eclipse then happened on April the 8th of this year, conjuncting Chiron to the minute, not just the degree. And we are starting to move towards, as I said, we have 6 months of forward movement, especially these next 3 months, and especially the month of May. The astrology is lighter and kind of less charged than the month of June. And then July starts to lighten up a certain amount as well. But the personal planets, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, which travel together, and or close to each other, and Mars, which is now falling behind, they're going to continue to move around the chart. And as they do so, they are going to, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus and Mars still have to conjunct Jupiter and Uranus. And Mars is still going to be conjuncting the North Node, Chiron, Jupiter, and Uranus. But as those conjunctions end, as the planets move forward, they're going to start squaring and trining Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, opposing, and, you know, kind of having normal conversations that we are used to during the course of the year with these longer planets. Now, it is 7:30 and the sun sets in 10 minutes. I, my darlings, have invested in some professional lighting. It's not fancy lighting, but you know how much I hate doing videos with the old light that I had here, which was a table lamp, and it used to drive me crazy. So now when it gets sunsetty, I actually have something that I can use that, even though I don't like as much as normal light, but is usable. Isn't that nice? Let me see if I can adjust it. There we go. Adjust it on that side because it's a little bit darker. And now I don't have to feel icky about looking at these videos in that artificial orange light. So we kind of have decent enough lighting, God knows. Now, and there are all sorts of bizarre things I can do with these. I can like change colors with them and all that kind of stuff, but we're not going to do that right now. So you might say, why is he doing a video on the sign of Aries right now? As I said, I'm doing these videos looking ahead because after we got out the eclipses in Mercury retrograde and as we start to move forward, I feel that this content is helpful and relevant as you look ahead. We have 6 months of forward movement. By the time we get to Thanksgiving, the energies will become more challenging and heavier and more complicated and more retrospective. Mars will go retrograde, Mercury will go retrograde. Then after Mars goes direct, Mercury and Venus again go retrograde, and it's really by the time we're in April that we're done with these personal planet retrogrades. And of course, you know, as we head towards March of next year, we're going to be dealing with eclipses again. So I don't want to introduce a sense of fear around that time as much as let's just trust that just like these eclipses in Mercury retrograde that we've gone through have accelerated and clarified for us a sense of direction and how we are to move forward, let's trust that those retrogrades will arrive at a time and will have key and critical messages for us that we can use in order to move forward. Let's trust that they're coming up for a reason. They're not the easiest. It's not an easy set, you know, going from Mercury retrograde to Mars retrograde to then Mercury and Venus retrograde at a time of a solar eclipse. It's a lot. But we'll get through it and we'll wonder why it's happening and what it's all about. What are we really going to, what sort of a birth canal are we really going to deal with at that point? Because whatever we've come through is kind of relatively minor in comparison to what we're headed to. But between now and Thanksgiving, with the exception of August, it's let's move forward, all systems go. And there's a lot in the chart to suggest that the moving forward consists of stabilizing the sign of Pisces, which has been seeing some sort of crisis activity since 2014, 15, 16, 17. That's what yesterday's video was about. But the bulk of the forward movement and growth is really symbolized by the Aries and Taurus part of the chart. The Aries hosting the North Node eclipses, and Taurus having just hosted on April 20th, 21st, Jupiter conjuncting Uranus. Jupiter ending a 12, 13-year cycle, Uranus making us more authentic in the Taurus part of the chart. So at this point in time, this year, we have gone through the personal planets, Sun and Venus, and the new moon being done in the sign of Aries. At least those dates have been marked. We had Mercury retrograde in Aries from about 15 degrees to about 26 odd degrees. Mercury till the 12th of this month, for another week or so, is still going through the shadow degrees, the degrees it went retrograde over. Most importantly, when Mercury went retrograde, the only planet it conjuncted 3 times, direct, retrograde, and direct, was Chiron, which is the same planet that the new moon in Aries, the new moon solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th, conjuncted to the minute. And Chiron, I hate to describe Chiron as this, but there's no other way to describe it, is a planet, it's not a planet, of healing. But we're talking about, I prefer to use this kind of idea of coming back to ourselves and restoring ourselves, because we're talking about wounds or the wound or a wound carried forward typically since childhood that has prevented us from acting in a fully embodied and self-confident and kind of effulgent and comfortable in our own skin, self-confident way in the part of the chart that is transiting. So part of whatever it is that we're meant to lean into and the developments that we're going to see this year because of that North Node conjuncting Aries and North Node conjuncting Chiron in North Node solar eclipse new moon on April the 8th conjuncting Chiron, there we go, is that the developments are one of healing and exploring woundedness and resolving a sense of woundedness as we gallop forward over the next 6. I mean, it's not something that's not really what the task is, but it is what is going to be required of us as we actually start to take action in the direction that we want to take action in. Mercury conjuncts Chiron for the third and final time tomorrow on March the 6th. May the 6th. Seriously, I'm just getting so irritated with myself. May the 6th. And whatever it is that Mercury retrograde made visible and clear to us, things that were in our blind spot, whatever it is that Mercury retrograde made clear to us, things that are in our blind spot, things that we were intuitively somewhat wondering about but did not really have enough evidence of. Mercury direct for the, after a retrograde conjuncting Chiron would not surprise me if in the middle of all the kind of readiness to move forward and processing whatever we've been processing after the eclipses and Mercury retrograde, if somewhere, it may not even be completely known to us, but it wouldn't surprise me if in a certain sense we've headed over the past 6 days and heading into tomorrow with a sense of completion around the Mercury retrograde. But completion is also a very generic word. I think being clear about what we're leaving behind and being clear about, with Mercury retrogrades, often things are brought up, whether they're in our blind spot or whether it's something that proves something we were sensing intuitively. Often the things that are brought up are problematic or challenging, or we learn that someone is not completely on our side, or something is not completely done cleanly or completely, or something is not ironed. We learn things that make us look at directions and things that we were investing them in. And it's Mercury's way of saying, well, maybe you don't want to invest that fully or that completely, or maybe you need to go to the drawing board, or maybe let me make clear to you what place this actually has in your life, because you're thinking it's going to have a bigger place in your life than it actually does. Let me reveal the flies in the ointments. And I think with Mercury direct conjuncting Chiron tomorrow, and it's really over the past 5 odd days, it wouldn't surprise me if we have had a kind of a rush or a processing of things that may have felt unfair and unjust, that we have been able to find. It would have two effects. What and who are we moving forward with, and what and who and what situations are we leaving behind? And how do we really feel about something in a way that feels fair and right to us, so that we can move forward in a healed way. Does that make sense? If we're dealing with something that isn't right or isn't fair or is incomplete, or we're dealing with the consequences of something, we can sit and kind of rail against it in some ways, or we can try and prevent it, or we can try and, but the bigger question you have to come back to before you take any action is, what do you believe? What do you really think of yourself as you've gone through this process and as the Mercury retrograde has revealed things to you? Who do you really feel you are in this process? What were your intentions? What is right and wrong from your perspective? And it is in this processing over the past week or so that I think that we can use the word healing, because it wouldn't surprise me if by tomorrow or day after, even if the conversation, we're talking about Mercury, so we're talking about mental processing. And if you're not having conversations in writing or verbally with somebody else, you're having them with yourself. And the healing comes more as a result of us becoming clear. Of what we actually think from a healed and complete place. From a place where we are not holding ourselves as small or idiotic or where we're using our own judgment and our sense of values to say, this is what is right or wrong about this. I may or may not discuss it externally, but the reason why I feel I can move forward on this and be clear about who and what I'm carrying forward and who and what I'm not is because I feel clearer and I feel more healed about this situation. Now, healing is not about putting the blame or the responsibility of things on others. So that could very well be a part of the processing that also takes stock and allows us to take responsibility for our part in contributing to a situation. That too is a kind of healing. So with Mercury direct conjuncting Chiron for the third time tomorrow, wouldn't surprise me if this past week has had an element of, if there was something you were dealing with, especially if it came up around those dates of April the 1st and April the 25th, that had that Mercury retrograde quality of, I'm not talking about the mundane stuff we attribute to Mercury. Travel and technology breakdowns and, God, this lighting is so much better. And baggage delays, and I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about realizing and learning and understanding who's who and what's what and what's going on and what was in our blind spot. Wouldn't surprise me for the past 4 or 5 days, even if we have not addressed something or resolved something with someone. Wouldn't surprise me if we've gotten to a point in our processing process that we are more centered about it. The way to know that we have healed, I think, is when a situation holds less fear for us. Because we have gotten to a place with an adequate amount of love and respect for ourselves and the other parties involved, so that we can look through things with a lens of understanding. And I'll use the word love for ourselves, of course, and hopefully others. And a sense of clarity with regard to what is right and what is fair and what makes sense and what does not make sense and what is real and what is not real, so that we can move forward from that place. And as a result of which, the situation that was unhealed and that we were processing and getting downloads around while Mercury was retrograde can now be approached as a result of this processing, and this coming back to a place of appropriate love and respect for ourselves and other parties involved, the situation holds less fear. Mercury, after it conjuncts Chiron tomorrow, after the 12th or so, moves past the shadow degrees, and then on May the 15th, moves into Taurus and heads right into squaring Pluto. But we'll cover that. We'll cover that. We'll cover that. It's still a second away there. This is the Aries video. I know I've already mentioned tomorrow I'm going to do the new moon in Taurus video. And typically I do my week ahead video on Mondays. So I'm going to do the week ahead video on Tuesday this week. Really, there's only 2 bits of news for the week ahead, which is the new moon in Taurus, which is going to be on Tuesday, and the fact that the sun conjuncts Taurus at the end of the week. I'm pretty sure. Let me just check. Yeah, that's it. Sun conjuncts Uranus in Taurus. And this new moon in Taurus, of course, is conjuncting Uranus technically, but the sun conjuncts Uranus on May the 13th. Those are the 2 astrological bits of information for this coming week, and both of them are going to get addressed in tomorrow's video. So I just want to give you that heads up, because anyone looking for that week ahead video, just know it'll come on Tuesday, but the bulk of the content will be done and dealt with tomorrow. In fact, if I address it enough tomorrow, I might just in tomorrow's video say I won't do a week ahead video. But coming back to the sign of Aries. Mercury entered Aries on March the 9th. It's the first of the personal planets to enter Aries. The North Node conjuncted Chiron on March the 5th in Aries. The Sun entered Aries on March the 19th. Mercury entered its shadow degrees around March the 18th and headed right into conjuncting the North Node. I've done videos on the Mercury retrograde and the shadow degrees, so you can look more on that. I'm just giving you a sense of the planet of communication came into Aries first. The Sun entered Aries, illuminating that part of the chart, and around that time is when Mercury entered its shadow degrees and conjuncted the North Node. That Mercury retrograde was a lot about the direction. And remember when I was talking about the Aries eclipse, I was talking about us pulling back the arrow in our bow so that after April the 28th, we could release it with greater confidence towards a target that felt clearer to us. The whole point of the Mercury retrograde and the eclipses was so that we could, having entered the time period of the eclipses and Mercury retrograde with a sense of confusion about how we're going to move forward and whether the direction we want to move forward is the right direction and blah, 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 is so that by the time we were done with that period by April 28th, we could point that arrow towards a target that we really wanted to move towards. With everything that is going on, the Pluto transformation of Capricorn and Aquarius and the stabilizing in Pisces and the energy that that is going to take, ultimately the arrow of our lives, the arrow of our desire, our desired path and where we want to move ahead and where the growth is symbolized by the Aries part of the chart. That is where the North Node eclipses are, including the North Node eclipse next year on March the 29th. That's where the solar eclipses are. That's where the starting, moving towards energy is. With everything that we are managing and experiencing and cooperating and supporting Pluto and managing Pisces, that is the direction that and as I said, over the past few days, it wouldn't surprise me, even about a week ago, it wouldn't surprise me after Mercury retrograde, we were like, all right, let's get back on the horse. Let's start to move in that Aries direction. And after the new moon in Taurus, that energy will compound. Not just because the new moon in Taurus is going to open up a portal of activity in the Taurus part of our chart, but also because it is the next new moon after Mercury went direct after the solar eclipse. So that energy is the Aries eclipse is also going to continue to grow and develop. And it'll be intriguing to see what the conversation is going to be related to the growth in the Aries part of the chart and the activities in the Taurus part of the chart, which are also gaining greater momentum. Mercury, the planet of communication, came into Aries first. The Sun came in next. Mercury entered its shadow degrees and conjuncted the North Node. Mercury conjuncted Chiron the first time on March the 20th. It's conjuncting Chiron for the third time tomorrow, May the 6th. Mercury went retrograde on April the 1st. Venus entered Aries on April the 4th, on the same day that the Sun conjuncted the North Node. When Venus entered Aries and Venus left Aries at the end of April, Venus left Aries on April the 29th. So from April the 4th to April the 29th, Venus declared what was of value. What was the door that was going to be open and remain open through this process of the eclipses? What were we actually going to move towards? What were we going to try and protect? Mars came into Aries on April the 30th. Mars is now in Aries. Outside of the Mercury conjunction with Chiron tomorrow, the two remaining conjunctions that are going to be made are Mars conjuncting the North Node on April the 18th and Mars conjuncting Chiron on, I swear to God, if I don't get the months right, I'm just going to scream. Mars conjuncting the North Node on May the 18th, forgive me, and Mars conjuncting Chiron on May the 29th. Mercury conjuncts Chiron tomorrow, Mars conjuncts the North Node on May the 18th, Mars conjuncts Chiron on May the 29th. That is the information. I don't know why I am so garbled. After Mercury and the Sun and Venus have done their work in Aries, Mars comes in as the ruler of Aries. But wherever Mars goes, our energy goes. And after Mercury coming in and going retrograde and going direct, after the Sun coming in and creating the new moon solar eclipse, after Venus coming in and saying, here is what is of value, here's the door that is going to remain open, here's the door you're likely going to go through, here's what you need to protect, here's what you need to invest in, here's the gift I'm giving you. Mars comes in and says, all right, let's pursue this, let's pursue our goals, and in the process, we're going to come up against a certain amount of conflict. So let's address and manage that conflict and set the boundaries where we need to. Mars has two purposes: hunt, gather, pursue goals, and protect what is of value, set boundaries where we need to. Mars is, of course, associated with conflict and competition, and in more extreme cases, battles and war and bloodshed. But it does not have to go that far. At its best, it is an assertive energy. It is our testosterone. It is our yang masculine side, irrespective of our gender. or a gender identification. So now, during the month of May, in the sign of Aries, that has seen all this activity and where the current solar eclipse is operating, at least till the middle of June, if not for the next 6 months, and we get the next solar eclipse on March the 29th of next year, Mars during the month of May is in the sign of Aries saying, and Mars will conjunct the North Node, the direction we are meant to move in by the middle of May. Mars will conjunct Chiron, which Mercury conjuncts tomorrow, as if to say, what action needs to be taken to complete this healing? This coming back to ourselves. Post-Mercury has gone direct. This sense of, I know what is right, or I don't care if this is, whatever conversation you say, I am whole about this. I have processed my part in something, and I have processed others' part in something, and I know what is right or wrong. And when I stand in that with cleanness and with integrity and from a place of healing and from a place of love towards myself and others, I feel like I can handle whatever it is that comes my way because I know I am in integrity. Mars now comes in and says, all right, April 28th is behind us. Mercury is direct. I am here for the month of May till about June the 9th, I think. And now, at the right time, while Mercury is direct, while the eclipses are behind us, we can get in action. In this direction that we have. Remember, Mars takes 2 years to go into some part of the chart. So even if we had articulated in 2023 what direction we want to move in, since March, April, and especially by July, August, we did not have Mars, our rocket fuel, in the Aries part of the chart to push us in that direction. Now for the month of May and into early June, we have Mars here. So expect action, activity. And as I said, the astrological energy in May is cleaner and more flowy, especially as we head towards the end of May. More action-packed, more constructive, whereas the astrological action in June is a little bit more pressure-filled. I've given you the background in the Aries part of the chart. We've talked about why the eclipses are there. I've given you the sense that this is the direction we need to move in, and this is where our desire sits. Whatever it is, that arrow, that thread that is pulling us through and forward. With the North Node eclipses, always move forward in a grounded way and ensure that the excitement of move and desire to move forward in a particular direction does not erase your ability to plan for things, keeping your emotional and financial security requirements in check, and honoring them. Don't throw caution to the wind as if you are in Las Vegas sitting at a roulette table, because the North Node will energetically get you to that place out of the excitement and desire of, I know this is right for me. I know this is, the North Node has, it's not that it has a delusional quality, but it has a kind of a magical, maniacal, the direction is right, but it can, in the excitement of feeling like we're in sync and in flow and doing things that are right for us, we can end up throwing caution to the wind and kind of going on our hero's journey. But going on hero's journeys can involve, if we are not careful, sleeping on pavements. So let's not get to that point. You can still move forward in a desired direction, but keep your wits about you and make sure that your 3D reality needs are being honored and met. Outside of this context, this video is covering 3 things. Wrapping up the Mercury, retrograde Mercury now direct conjuncting Chiron tomorrow, moving past the shadow period in the middle of May, moving into Taurus. Number 2, Mars spending May and early June in Aries and giving us the firepower, the testosterone, the action, the make it happen, the roll up your sleeves and pursue your goals and protect your boundaries in the process. Energy that we can now use to capitalize on the thinking and processing that has been going on here with Mercury and the opportunity that Venus has given us and the solar examination that we have done and the ignition and the spark that the new moon solar eclipse and the opportunity to move forward in a more healed way that new moon solar eclipse on April the 8th ignited. The third and final thing that I want to tell you and I want to remind you of is that when a retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun, it starts a new communication cycle. And I am learning as an astrologer to respect these communication cycles more and more. They end up providing a kind of bedrock on which things sit. Mercury went retrograde on April the 1st. Mercury conjuncted the Sun on April the 11th. On April the 11th of 2024, a new communication was begun in and related to the sign of Aries. April 11th to the 25th was the first phase, which is much more a kind of a taking stock, requirements gathering phase. If you hear a kind of a snoring sound, that is my cat sitting about 8-10 feet from here snoring away. He's had his dinner. April the 25th to June the 14th is phase 2, the most yang, seed planting, growth, platform building set of mercurial activities related to the sign of Aries. June the 14th to August the 5th is phase 3, where we take stock of everything that we have done by June the 14th and then build on it and expand on it and refine it. August the 5th, Mercury goes retrograde. August the 5th to August the 18th, we wrap up whatever is pending and left. And August the 18th, the next Mercury cycle begins. And I can't remember whether it begins in Virgo or in Leo, but that's where it's going to begin. I have given you examples in the last couple of videos of my last couple of Mercury cycles and how relevant they were. I have a Leo rising. The Mercury cycle that occurred between when Mercury was retrograde in August, September of last year through December 22nd was in my second house. And I ended up booking some work. You know, there was all sorts of other things going on that provided me with an income base in a certain sense that has carried me through till now with all sorts of things happening that I'm not going to go into. This is not a personal forum. Then Mercury's next cycle for me, starting December 22nd, but really getting going from January the 1st, was in my 6th house in Capricorn. And the astrology and this channel, indeed, as I mentioned to you, it was in that 4th and final phase while Mercury was technically retrograde, but it was the last leg of my Mercury cycle in Capricorn in my 6th house that I got to a point where I could start to monetize this channel. Now, since April the 11th, the Mercury cycle has begun in the sign of Aries. And since April the 25th, and increasing as Mercury gathers speed, It is time to, and Mercury cycles are about mercurial activities, communication, transactions, contracts, travel. The interesting thing is that in 2024, everything happens on the wings of Mercury. My videos, the uploading, the processing, the computers, the emails, the readings, the phone lines, we live in the age of Mercury. But the tenor of the activities is very communication and transaction oriented. But there's a certain fundamental growth and platform that occurs during a Mercury cycle that all the other activities that we're doing can lean on or can sit on during this time. So anyone who has approached these videos that I may have done about the pending aspects in Capricorn, pending in Aquarius, pending in Pisces, but especially this one, looking ahead in the sign of Aries over the next 12 months, new moon solar eclipse currently, Mars in Aries currently, Mercury cycle that takes us into August, solar eclipse on October 2nd in Libra that starts yet another process of release in Libra related to the Aries North Node eclipse, like we had last October. And a solar eclipse next year, again on March the 29th, with Mercury and Venus retrograde. So that solar eclipse also doesn't start to gather momentum till April into May next year. And the arrow of desire was one that started to get shaped and clarified and pointed in a certain direction last year with the two new moons in Aries in March and April of 2023. And this is where the growth is. And yes, wow, my cat is snoring away. I had no idea I was doing ASMR. A lot of the supporting activities are going to be occurring in the sign of Taurus, because we have the new moon in Taurus, we have Venus in Taurus right now, we of course have the sun in Taurus, the sun is going to be getting ready to conjunct Uranus, the new moon is conjunct Uranus. Exciting, forward-moving energies. As the planets move past the conjunction with Uranus, they're going to get to a place where they trine Pluto in Aquarius as they enter into Gemini. By the end of this month, Jupiter will enter Gemini and get ready for the next big astrological event of the year, also involving Jupiter, which is trining Pluto on June the 2nd, I think. Is it June the 2nd or June the 6th? Why am I asking you? It's on June the 2nd. Even though we have a North Node lunar eclipse in Pisces in the second half of this year. It's a lunar eclipse, and it's an eclipse of completion. It's an eclipse of visibility. The igniting eclipses, the solar eclipses, remain in the sign of Aries till the middle of next year. The North Node ones. The arrow of desire is still very firmly in the Aries part of the chart. The communication aspect of things is clearer, more healed. It doesn't have to mean that it's more resolved. The energetic firepower of Mars is now behind us. We get to act in the Aries part of the chart. It doesn't matter where the rest of the planets are. Where Mars is where our energy goes. Even if Mars is the only planet transiting a certain part of our chart. And we have a Mercury cycle in Aries that takes us through August. And then as we enter October, we release again. We enter a period of successive retrogrades. we have another eclipse in Aries on March 29th. And by the middle of next year, hopefully that arrow has reached its target. Time to get on the horse and time to build and move towards, and time to prepare, because moving towards something also involves cleaning up where we are and preparing to move towards something. And the communication cycle really makes me think, what is going to come up related to that door that Venus opened in April in the Aries part of the chart? Venus is now busy opening doors in the Taurus part of the chart. She opens doors and she provides assistance and opportunity and wherever she is. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow as we talk about the Taurus video. I hope you found this helpful and useful. It's an important, we're going to keep referring back to these videos to some extent because, yeah. It's exciting. It's nice to be, you know, as I said in the last weekly update, it sort of has that welcome to the first day of the rest of your life kind of quality. And that feeling is most alive in the Aries part of the chart right now. Mercury's direct, that solar eclipse can take hold. Mars is here, the ruler of Aries. The Mercury cycle is in Aries. It doesn't matter if we've gone from having the Sun and Chiron in the North Node and Venus and Mercury in Aries at the same time now to simply Mercury for another week and then Chiron, North Node, and Mars and the bulk of the planets are in Taurus. The arrow of desire is in the Aries part of the chart till the middle of next year. And May is the month where it really leaves the bow and starts to move towards its target. Until May, it has been, even since last year, even since March, April of last year, it has simply been a process of drawing the arrow back. If you found this video useful, comment, like on it. It gives it more circulation on YouTube. Feel free to tell your friends, anybody you think that might find this content useful. You can share it with them. If you're interested in getting a personal reading with me, you can email me at the email address in the description box below. I can give you information on rates, etc. There is a thanks button now that is visible. Now that I've monetized the channel, you can use that to contribute to the channel if you'd like. There's no pressure to do that, but it's there. Comment, I told you about commenting, liking, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. And next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. And if you hover over that, there's a wiggly bell. If you click on the wiggly bell, you'll be notified when I do new videos. Tomorrow, we talk about the new moon in Taurus. And then I might, if I feel like I just need to do a quick summary of the week ahead and address the fact that we have the new moon and the sun conjuncting Uranus shortly after that, I might do that. And I will leave it at that. I hope this gives you food for thought. Let's move towards, with a greater sense of, let's capitalize on the eclipses and Mercury retrograde and move past some of the fear and the anxiety that process creates. Capitalize on Mercury's final conjunction with Chiron tomorrow. Feel more healed. Wow, my God, what is he dreaming of, do you think? Anyway. Oh, by the way, the folks who left explanations about the Hierophant and gave information about closed captioned, I'm very grateful. Thank you. You've solved multiple mysteries for me when I asked that question. So if anyone ever wants to use subtitles with these videos, there's apparently a closed caption icon or something that you can press in YouTube that will automatically generate subtitles for you. All right, enough is enough. I am done. I will be back in touch tomorrow. Thanks.